Hey guys, Nate, the Auto Outdoorsman here, and I have laid in front of you all the ingredients you will need to make this dish. What is this dish, you ask? It's what I call bourbon stew. The only ingredient that I'm adding in this, just for the sake of trying it, is the chourice right here, but I have beef, bourbon, beef broth, some onions, some potatoes, and some carrots. The makings of a great stew. I personally love stews, and so do my friends. I hope you guys will enjoy this recipe. I will say, with the alcohol being here, because I will be cooking this for a long time, the alcohol will be cooked off, or will mostly be cooked off. So please do take caution with serving this to younglings if you do. And if you're under the age of 21, I also do ask that you do not buy or drink alcohol, as that is both legal, and if you drink alcohol, it's also not good for you biologically. So, I'm going to start getting this ready, and I'll bring you guys along with me on it. Let's get started. Okay guys, so what I have here is I have sirloin tip strips. I usually prefer using stew beef for the recipe, but in this case this was the best I was able to get my hands on. However, this is from a pretty good butcher, and you know what, I do love getting my meats from a good butcher. So what I have here is I have a pound of beef that, well actually it's a pound and 1.3 pounds specifically. Cases like this, base it off what you got. This will be a recipe that'll mostly be for, primarily for, how do I want to put it, a base camp situation. You wouldn't want to do this on the trail, as this will be a lot of food, but if you have a lot of people and you have a way of preserving it, go for it. So what I'm doing is just stew beef. I wouldn't have to cut this up, but because this is bigger, I have to cut it up. Now I will say, there's some qualities in meat that I look for when I'm making stew. And the reason why I picked these tip strips is, if you can see, there's a lot of fat. Now I'm going to be cooking this for about 2 to 3 hours. Some people say you shouldn't cook stew that long. I've cooked stews as long as 6 hours before, and you know what? They've come out darn good. Sometimes I also like to occasionally put bacon in them, but in this case, since I have the chourice, that's going to be way too much fat, and I've had stews that have literally stood upside down. This recipe is going to be is going to be eaten by me and my friend Tom, and you've seen him in, I think, the Blue Hills hike, and I don't know if you've seen him in any other videos. I don't always remember who shows up in my videos, but he's a good buddy of mine, and me and him are going to have, after he gets out of work, me and him are going to have a nice dinner. I told him we were going to have bourbon stew, and he was excited. This is actually one of my biggest requested meals on most trips. You can do it with almost any meats. I'll do one in the future if you guys want, which it literally is nothing but, what is it? It's all the delicious parts of a Thanksgiving dinner, thrown in a pot, cooked up, and cooked in a bottle of bourbon. Drunken Thanksgiving stew. My friends love, and I actually ended up having to give the recipe to a few people because they loved it so much. So what we're going to do is, now the next step is going to be browning this meat. Sometimes I'll also do it with, I'll do the onions first sometimes, but in this case I'm going to brown these. I'm going to throw them up to the side right afterwards, and then brown the chourice, throw that to the side, and then do the veggies. Throw this in, and then we'll do that. So, see you guys in the next step. Okay guys, So now what I'm doing is just heating up the pan with the beef in it. I normally should actually add some oil to this now that I'm thinking about it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to brown the meat. So, just letting the pan heat up. So, sometimes if you can, just add just a tiny bit of oil to the pan just to grease it. Just so you're not steaming them. And then so they don't stick. Well, I'm going to brown these up and I'll show you the next step. Okay guys, so while my steak's finishing up browning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly slice this up. This will be a lot neater than the way I did it last time with my ramen. So I'm using a better knife. I'm doing it very thinly. This is why I love chourice, things like this. And you can eat this raw if you really wanted to, but it's a lot better cooked. You can cut it up into any thickness you want. You can even use ground chourice, which they sell. Again, you can replace this with any spicy sausage that you have on hand. 1 second. Okay, I have a hot pan with nothing in it, so hold on 1 second. Now all I need to do is add this to the pan. Sometimes easier to do this with 2 people if you got them. But I don't take things easy in the kitchen. It's actually why people let me cook, surprisingly. Still wondering as to the whole why thing. Un momento. By the way, normally when I clean this board instead of cooking on it, but in this case, everything's going straight in the pan. This is a very familiar sight. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this onion real quick. I don't want to do this. Okay, I just cut this in a way I normally don't. It's kind of because I'm rushing. Remember folks, don't rush in the kitchen. It'll end up really badly. Just because I didn't prepare. Yay! I'll just have to kill the heat on that pan in a second. Okay, now that I'm not rushing, or Russian, I'm not Russian, but I'm gonna slice up these onions to however we want them done. Some people say you should throw them in at the end of the dish. I cook them at the beginning. I actually use them to add a specific flavor at the beginning. I kind of caramelize them at the beginning. It's how I've always done it. And we'll take it from there, but I will add, these are also different colored onions, shaped onions than I'm used to. But, okay. This isn't my best chopping, I will say. This is something I'm actually pretty experienced at, and I'm just kind of fiddling and being me. Granted, I'm also not trying to win a beauty pageant right now. That'd be weird. I may need more onions in this. Good thing I have them. Woo! Now that is how you cut an onion. Also, the reason why your eyes burn is because there's, I think it's folic acid or something like that that gets released by the onion when you cut the cells, and that folic acid reaches with your it mixes with your tears and actually creates sulfuric acid, which is why your eyes burn when you're cutting onions. The way to get over it, there's a few ways. You can either you can actually chill the onions, and that will actually reduce the amount of damage to cells as you cut into them, and that will actually prevent the tearing, or it'll reduce it. A lot of those ones where the eye protection, that kind of works, but things like biting on red and those things, those don't really work. And by the way, the reason why I'm showing these recipes start to finish is so that if you want to recreate it, you know everything that I'm doing, down to how I cut these, to the steps. Along with bushcrafting and being outdoors, one of my favorite places to be is in the kitchen. That's why I'm always the camp cook. I'm always, I've been stuck one day. I've been stuck multiple times in the kitchen, the camp kitchen before. And there's a lot of it's just pictures of me sitting there in front of a pot, just watching it. Sometimes with a beer in my hand, because, well, I'm actually surprised I didn't grab one. But I'm handling a knife, and to be honest, that wouldn't be safe. Drinking and cutting. But there we go. Now you may be asking, why do I keep the roots on? It actually holds the cluster together and gives me a place to hold. So see, that's how I like to cut onions. I just had been a little bit out of practice. Also, I was rushing. Let's move these over to the pan and get the pan back on heat. Okay guys, so essentially what I'm going to do So I'm now going to put these bad boys on the heat, and I'm going to saute them down. Now I can relax from here on out. Because the rest, after these are cooked, is slow and easy. You see all that burnt bit down there? That will come out, and that will be delicious. Now, if you want these to be slightly caramelized, what you do, take salt, apparently this salt is stock. There we go. So what I'm actually going to do, now that I've started actually reducing this to low. Now, the reason behind that is now I want these to sweat. They're going to become translucent, and while that's going, and what I'll probably do is in these in-between parts where I just kind of let this go, what I'll probably do is I'll just speed it up, and we'll see how it goes. And up the meat, blood and all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm basically kind of now just letting these melt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up the potatoes over here. Basically, I just wash these up. And dirt off of them. It's nice and thin. The reason I chose Red Bliss this time, I usually choose something like russet, is Red Bliss tend to be a lot firmer after a long time, and I want this to have firm chunks of potato because that's what I like. If you want it to be a little thicker, and if you're cooking it for 2-3 hours like I am, and you want to add a little thickness to your stew, actually cut up a sweet potato, cook it for 3 hours. That will thicken it because the sweet potato will actually dissolve. And what we'll do is we'll get this now, as I said, this is going to be a recipe you're not going to want to do so much for a hiking trip. Unless you want to just bring small amounts of this and cook over the fire while you do camp tasks. This is more of a, someone's in the camp kitchen, you got a large group of people, you want to feed them. You want to up the food on this, and I'm not even sure that me and Tom will be able to eat all of this. But we'll see. I'm going to get these in the pan, and then I'm going to get some liquid in there. There's definitely going to be leftovers in this one, which is okay by me because it just means I get dinner tomorrow or I'm ready to work or whatever. It's actually going to be cooked a little bit shorter than I planned. It'll probably end up being cooked probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Depends on when Tom gets here. I'll show you what I'm looking at now. So I got all this. Now, I use baby carrots. I do use regular carrots a lot of the time, but in this case, I'm using baby carrots for one reason. They're easy. I'm not putting all of them in here because, well, I don't need to. I can actually save them for later. So I'm just using about half the bag of baby carrots. I've gotten smaller bags before. But I'm now right now just trying to get the bottom of the pot hot so I can deglaze it. Fancy word for getting the fond off the bottom. Which a fond, which fond is a French word for those nice bits at the bottom. Deglazing gets off the fond and it gets the nice, delicious bits up. So what I'm going to start with is beef broth, just to deglaze the pan with. And now for where it gets its namesake. Bourbon, Jim Beam, generally. There's two bourbons I usually use, which is one is Jim Beam. In this case, I'm going to use a lot less than, I'm going to use about half a bottle for this size. I'm going to get a little bit more beef broth. Hold on. Since it's a small dish, I don't want to overpower it on the bourbon. Now the bourbon adds kind of like appley smell to it, which I particularly like. If you're looking for other bourbons to use, I do recommend things such as Buffalo Trace Kentucky Bourbon, if you can get it. It's actually my favorite cooking one, but it is generally too hot. I mean, it's too expensive to usually use, so I usually use Jim Beam, which is a little bit cheaper. Ground cumin, a staple with any beef dish I use. Cumin just makes beef beefier. And often when I'm cooking, I kind of just go into the nearest cabinet and just grab random spices and find what I like. Almost grabbed coffee creamer. This was Mrs. Dash Italian Bentley. Unfortunately for all my normal bushcrafting people, for all my bushcrafting friends out there, I don't have Old Bay on me. Nor do I own Old Bay. And what I'm going to do, bring this to a boil and then bring it down to a simmer. And then I'm basically just going to let this sit until I'm hungry. This already smells delicious, and I really just want to drink it right now. But I'll give you guys an update later.